That's a very useful overview, and one cannot dispute it. But what I asked you was, is celibacy the detonating factor in the sexual outcomes? In other words, if the Church did not impose the demand for celibacy, had it not done so, would we be seeing, in your view, this enormous problem?
No, celibacy is not the cause of the problem. Celibacy is woven into the structure. It is central to the crisis, but it's not because of celibacy. It's because of non-celibate behavior of those who are bound in a celibate culture.
Okay, draw breath there, because I want to see whether Arthur and Chris are happy with that position. Chris, what do you think? Is celibacy the detonator, or is it simply part of a multifactorial equation?
The Church invites people to present themselves for priesthood and to remain celibate. Those who present themselves for priesthood are of a certain character. Some of them are very immature. They've asked us to present ourselves from a very early age. So some are very immature. They don't get properly educated or proper training. To answer your question, I don't think celibacy is the problem. I think training, formation, selection is the problem.
In other words, that their innocence is artificially prolonged, that they don't go through a sexual maturation process, and therefore...
They're asked to live without friends, without human contact.
Right.
Noli me tangere, don't touch me. Now that was our...
What's that again? I like that.
Noli me tangere is the aphorism, do not touch me.
I can have that put on a T-shirt. I think that's very good. Arthur, what do you think? What's the National Catholic Reporter's view on this question of questions?
May I say that I'm the editor-at-large and former editor rather than the editor. But the view is, what happens if you have a very large pool of people who might be priests? And if married men could be priests, or even if women could be priests, you've got a huge number to choose from. By saying only celibates, you've automatically shrunk the pool to start with. Mm-hmm. It's become a very, very small area from which to select. When people were going into the priesthood, says I as an observer, never having felt that call, at one point, and I'm thinking particularly of the 40s and 50s and post-World War II, early post-World War II, these people were sort of God's Marines. I mean, this was a very macho thing to do. It was, you were going to give up sex for God. And by God, you didn't know what you were giving up. I think it was after that generation. I mean, look at when the first of these people who are now coming to our notice went into the seminary. You know, it was late 60s, early 70s. The mood of the nation had changed. The call of who was going into the priesthood it was shrinking. And so they were starting on this path of taking more and more people from an already small pond, who probably shouldn't have been going in.
Richard, you seem to be identifying celibacy as the cause of a culture of secrecy.
I certainly am. Look, say that every lawyer in the country had to be male, had to be unmarried, and had to vow perpetual and perfect chastity. Would it change the culture of law? Well, I mean,
it'd sure as hell change the culture of broadcasting.
How do we know?
No, Richard, keep going with this. This is a fascinating and very interesting mind game.
Well, the point is that people don't realize that priests aren't just unmarried men, but they're bound together by certain very unique laws, and some of the unique laws are secrecy. And the crisis in the United States, as I'm following it day by day by day, and followed it for 42 years, is that this substance that held things together has been split open for people to look at. And that is what's raised the hackles of people who are saying, I want accountability. And I do disagree with Arthur that this is a recent phenomenon. In my studies, my cases go back to 1917. Sexual abuse of minors has been a factor in the American church all along, a small factor. But what's happened is that a critical mass of victims and victims' families has grown so large that it has pushed along with the loss of credibility of the hierarchy about things sexual, has pushed the balance the other way around. And so people are looking at this culture that, for instance, is exemplified to me by the bishop. I've been in on now 58 of these cases of sexual abuse by priests against minors. And you look through the documentation, and you see how it's operated within the diocese, within the church. And a bishop who said, who was confronted with, this was a lie that he said, and he said, I only lie when I have to.
You know, if I wasn't paying absolute attention to this discussion, if I just tuned in, I might have thought, and I'll put this to you, Chris, that we were discussing the New South Wales police force, where once again you've got a group who are isolated, apart,
or prisoners, or soldiers,
but
or
I'm thinking about the police culture as they're in parallel to the priest culture and the notion of secrecy. Secrecy is a very powerful bond, isn't it? Sharing secrets.
Yes, and it's true to say that some clergy are able to tell lies to protect the good name of the church. Now, that's true.
Are they expected to, Richard, or have they been expected to in the past, to hold the fort, to circle the wagons, not to admit to these problems?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. We have stacks now of documents. We have thousands of pages of documents from the cardinal in Los Angeles, the cardinal and the bishops in New York, the cardinal in Boston, that show this.
And the Boston cardinal says that this is a wake-up call. My God, the wake-up call was 30 years ago. This is a drama, a tragedy.
Okay, let's look at an administrative problem. The other night we did a program on nuns with an American writer, very sympathetic to the cause. And she shocked me by pointing out that the mean age of an American nun is now middle 60s. If there is, in fact, not a policy change from the Vatican in terms of celibacy, marriage among the religious, will not the Catholic Church simply put itself slowly but surely out of business? I put that to you, Arthur.
It'll put itself out of business as a clerical culture. But if you take the United States, there's still a very strong, educated, vibrant Catholic laity, most of them champing at the bit.
Well, that sounds terrific. That sounds progress, doesn't it?
Yeah. And then if you go to individual parishes, you find a great deal of life. I mean, I was at a church the other week where the priest addressed this issue wide openly, and people didn't know whether to give him a standing ovation or not, but by God, they were with him. You know, there's a lot of that going on. What you're not getting is any display of sympathy for the way the hierarchy has handled this. Now, as far as the nuns are concerned, they would like the concept, some of them, of temporary vows. A woman could come in for 10 years, join, be a sister,
or come in at the end of a distinguished or career in secular society, or indeed from motherhood.
And we're talking about flexibility of thought, and the church is inflexible.
Right. Well, Chris, let me put something else to you. Let's imagine that we get, as we come off air, we hear a news flash from Rome. A decision has been made, priests can marry. If you allowed married priests, wouldn't that open up the church to potential scandal? After all, married priests would mean there'd be divorced priests or publicly dysfunctional families, potential for the church to be...
Of course, but that's what life's like. That's what everybody's life's like. That's what.
Well, they put up with... They endure it with the Windsors, without the monarchy disintegrating.
Yes, but that's what the papacy was like in the Renaissance period. It's just that we've become so puritanical and so bound by legislation. What a wonderful world it would be if the bishops and cardinals in Rome, can you imagine it, felt free to change?
A wonderful world, Richard, or a completely dysfunctional church?
No, I think I agree with Arthur that what I'm experiencing is that people aren't leaving the church over this, that people are claiming the church. They have demythologized the bishops and the cardinals. They don't look to them anymore for the answers. and they're gaining a great